Hey, yo, it's me, Pops Fan Marmalade, and you're watching the Comics-Related Madness Network. So come get some. CromCon. CromCon.
Your favorite podcast is Critical Blast.
The Madness Entertainment Group presents the Madness Comic Network with original programming and additional comic-related content. Tune in and subscribe to Comic Talk with Pops Van Zant on YouTube.
Creating beyond calculation, beyond politics, and beyond the big two. Welcome, Silverliners, to the wonderful world of Wednesday Wham. I'm your host, Dean Zachary, and we are joined tonight by Barbara J. Kaalberg, the Empress of the Inks herself. It's a special night for her, and the Paragon of Pencils, Rob Davis. Rumor has it that we will be joined late by one of the Wizards of Wordplay, at least Rory Boyle, and possibly Brent Larson later on in the broadcast. But the subject tonight, very special subject, is Over the Empress Shoulder. So we're going to get to watch Barb create her inking magic, and she's got some time-lapse videos she's created for us. And we're going to watch her ink and sort of discuss as we watch. And I kind of want to set the table and give you guys an idea of how difficult it is to do what Barb does. For all you aspiring inkers out there, one of the most important skill sets you can acquire is the ability to interpret pencils. Every penciler is different. That sounds like an obvious statement, and it is academic in one way, but in another way, there's a very particular way to ink one person over another. Some people use heavy outlines and more traditional open for color inks. Other people, like myself, tend to pencil with a lot of hatching and a lot of line work, more in the Silvestri school or the Jim Lee school. So Barb has had to deal with my stuff for a long time, as well as names much, much more well known than myself. Without further ado, however, Barb, if you were to give advice before we start watching the videos, what's a good way for a young aspiring inker to get their feet wet, so to speak, to get, what should they practice on?
Well, the most important word that you just said there is practice. And I know it's hackneyed and cliche to say practice, 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 but there's a reason why it's a cliche. It's because it's true.
Yeah.
When I first started inking over 30 years ago, I spent just a year making lines. I would fill up 11 by 17 bristle board with large squares, and each one of those squares I would fill with lines. There would be circles and curves and stuff like that, and just straight lines, hatching lines. And I spent a year just perfecting my control over a brush. That was back when I was still using a brush. I used Winsor & Newton Series 7, size 2. The quality of those brushes in the last few years has declined, however. So I switched to a Raphael 8404, either a size 1 or 2, until about 2 years ago when I switched all to digital. And I think I've talked about this before. The reason I switched to digital was because I have developed an extremely minute tremor in my hands. It's called essential tremors. You can't hardly even tell or notice in real life, but I could see it on my artwork. And for a perfectionist like me, it wasn't good enough to be almost as good as I used to be.
Right.
So I switched to digital, where I could turn up the stabilizing control or the streamline control on my digital pen, and it offset that tremor. You don't see it at all anymore.
Do you recommend a new inker, an aspiring inker, begin with analog to learn the discipline,
Yes.
or is that unnecessary at this time? Talk about that a little bit.
Because people say, well, digital, that's cheating. No, because I'm using the exact same hand strokes, the exact same techniques that I used working in physically with real brush and ink as I do on the iPad. I'm just using a stylus instead of a brush, and I'm working on an iPad instead of a bristleboard, Strathmore.
Right.
So I'm using the same exact techniques. So really, I would learn to do it old school first, because you never know when you're going to need it old school, especially if you. Hi, Vic.
Hi, Vic.
What is Sarah, Silverliners?
Also, welcome, Aaron, to the broadcast. Glad you made it.
You guys can see me? Oh crap.
Yeah. We just set the table just for a few minutes, just kind of talking about what Barb's going to cover tonight. Just encouraging aspiring inkers to practice and be versatile. Try to ink over lots of different pencilers. Nowadays you can find your favorite, legendary pencilers artwork online and ink over to train.
There's a lot of them that post their pencils on Facebook and get it from there. I've worked on really crummy, tiny little thumbnails and blow it up, so it's really very digitized, and I've still managed to ink it. But I would still say start inking physically, because you want to have something to sell as well.
Yeah.
Especially like for Kickstarters like we do. One of the add-ons that we have for our Kickstarter is physical art. Now, I can't produce the physical art anymore, although I have a ton in reserve from previously. So you'll notice like the cover for Divinity 3 is penciled by Dean, but it's inked by Tommy Floramonte, so that we could have a physical cover to sell. So you really do want to learn how to do it physically before you jump to digital because it gives you another source of income.
That's a good point. Aspiring inkers also learn as much as you can about inking traditionally before you move into digital, because it will help you decide what tricks and what effects you want to use digitally. It's really helpful to know how to stipple concrete shadows or crackle in broken rock or snow or flame or smoke, before you just start grabbing a brush where it's all preset for you. There's something about the individual's personal and distinct interpretation of something before you use a preset interpretation. And that's not to say that I'm disparaging it at all, but you can manipulate presettings, and we'll get into this as we watch you ink or watch the recordings of you inking. Yeah, let's do this. Let's get started.
Yeah.
Pop says, hey Bob. We're gonna get started here and screen share. Why don't you just talk us through how you approach it and how you get started?
All right. Well, first I turn them into blue lines.
What are we doing tonight?
Yeah.
Look at that.
Isn't that awesome?
Yep. And as you can see, my brush strokes are pretty much the same as I did it physically. I have a brush that I got a couple of years ago. I haven't been able to find it lately online, but it has a great taper to it. And as you can see here, it works just like a regular brush. So I'm just working along here, doing hair. You guys can ask me questions while we're doing this.
Yeah, no, this is obviously a woman's hair. Do you outline the entire hair shape first and then go in with strokes, or does it matter? Talk to us.
No, I kind of play. I just kind of look at it and see what the general shape is. I start working with it. I like to make hair with lots of lines. I don't like big, chunky, solid blocks of hair.
Okay.
I like the details, One good thing about digital is that you can put different layers. You see how I just made a stroke right through the hair there?
Yes.
The good thing about working on digital is that, and see that stabilizing effect. Wow, that's
Look
great.
how smooth those strokes
Yeah.
are. We're going to talk about that and how Barb sets that stabilizer effect and also the tapering and streamline effect. But just to be clear with everyone, she's inking here in Procreate,
right, on an iPad.
Right.
And you might be saying, "Oh my God, she's inking right through the hair," but I'm doing them on different layers, and I'll take the opacity down on a layer that I'm looking at to see where the hair is falling, so that I can go in and delete. Now, this saves me a ton of time. I will freely admit that digital has sped up my my processes a lot, because when I was doing it physically, I had to physically stop at every little hairline and then jump over and go again, start from the other side. Here I can just put them on different layers, turn down the opacity to see what's what, and delete what I want. You'll also notice that I flip the canvas a lot.
I noticed that, man. You're all over the place. You're like turning and spinning. That looks like how my crystal board looks on my drafting table.
That's exactly. That's a holdover. That's a holdover from the physical work. That's how I work physically. I would spin my pages physically, but you'll notice right there, I just flipped it horizontally so that I can get a better angle coming in. It makes my natural angles work better if I can flip the pages horizontally back and forth.
Yeah, one thing you can't do with the physical is flip it in space, like flip it in 3D. So you flopped it. So
yes,
which is that's a neat little trick that you can't do with physical.
Right.
inking.
Now the only problem is that sometimes I forget that I flipped them.
I found this on the web.
Okay, Siri.
Tell us what.
I will forget that I have flipped it, and then I'll put it in the Dropbox, and it's backward. I had 2 pages in Divinity number 3 that I had to have poor Mike Belcher go back in and re-letter because I had sent them to him flip, and the script actually fit pretty close.
Wow.
Cool.
to the flipped version. So I'm like, I'm really sorry, but you got to go redo these and flip the pages, please.
What exact type of brush are you using?
Mine's called a super smooth inker, and I got it from True Grit Texture Supply, which is a great place to get brushes. But I can't seem to find this particular one anymore. They do have different versions of this, but if you just Google super smooth inking brush for Procreate, you're going to come up with half a dozen or more places now that you can get them. They weren't as easy to find when I started because I guess inking comic books wasn't huge with Procreate. Help me, please help me.
That's what the fly. Yeah. That's just amazing. Look at the resets, how many resets you'll go as you go back to look at your perspective from a distance and then close back in, because I'll notice that if I'm hyper focused on an area, sometimes I may overwork it or it may not successfully integrate as I pull away and look at it. So that's another digital, shall we say, pothole you want to dodge, is hyper focusing too much, because you'll spend too much time in one area and you realize, holy crap, I got to look at the whole piece here and be comprehensive.
Here I have switched to using an eraser, and you can choose all of the brushes that you have available for inking. You have available for erasing as well. And I've chosen the super smooth inker in erasing, and I've erased, put strokes in her hair. Right now I'm past the hair and I'm going on to different things here.
And you could do it with white ink as well.
Yes.
So if you don't have the ability to erase whatever program you're using.
Yes.
You could just use white ink instead.
Those look like vector lines on a JPEG or bitmap image. They are so smooth. They do look like vector lines. I know some genetic mutants who can actually ink in Illustrator, which I've always wondered, why would you want to? Because you jump out the window.
It would be so much work.
Yeah, it'd be so much work. But
there's another thing I like is that it'll automatically, if you hold your stylus down, it'll automatically smooth your little circle out.
Yes, it will. That's one of the little tricks. Everybody always look up tricks for the trade. Just hold it down and it'll make a perfect circle for you. And then you just use the drop.
The auto fill.
The fill. Where you'll have a contained area and you can just fill. But those are great lines. But you see the speed with which you're doing that. I know we're talking about time lapse compression. And
this is only time by 2. I've only taken this up. This is double time.
Okay.
So still
pretty quick. That's still very fast.
Strangely enough, it's actually almost.
We've had some adult beverages, I think, because to the vector go the spoils. Wow, that's pretty good, man. It's pretty good. Good material.
It's actually not hard to vector the ink and vector. I've been using Illustrator for years. You actually can almost do it faster. Well, I know that sounds weird, and the reason you can do it, see those ink lines like in the brush?
Yes.
Like if you go up to her hair, those lines.
Yes.
You could just do a blend. So say you want to get 30 strokes in there.
Yeah.
You just take from the beginning, you just blend the line so it repeats it, and then you can just nudge the line you want to do.
You know what I hate about it though is playing with Bezier curves and pulling, pushing. That just to me that's technical and not artistic. Vic says, Barb, I've heard about people doing 45 minutes for stuff you really need to hyper focus on and 45 to finish it off. Have you ever tried inking like that?
Hyper focus is what I call being in the zone.
Okay.
I can get in the zone on something and I'll look up and 2 hours have gone by. I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
You know, that is the best because you're just so on, and everything's working perfectly and you're feeling it down into your very bones,
Yes.
Yeah, I call it the zen of penciling or inking. You become one with the work.
Yep. Now you notice I'm giving her some line weight here on certain aspects of her anatomy, because not only is it closer to the screen, but I want it to pop and give it weight. So here I'm going to go over.
Do you know where the light source is in this shot? And so are you consciously heavying the lines away? And
now here I'm going to use a stamp. Watch this.
Okay.
I'm going to cheat and use stamp.
Oh, look at you. Oh.
And then I just
Erase what you don't need.
erase what I don't need.
Yeah. Wow, that's... Yeah, see that?
Yes, I know where the light source is coming from. It's a late afternoon. Well, it's kind of mid-late, not quite terribly late, but
Do you know, in
there
art
is her
school...
derriere, and
Oh, nice.
I want to
Heavy.
emphasize, her tushy. So the
Curves.
line is much thicker.
Yeah.
The line is much thicker as towards the camera there.
Do
where
you
her ass
use
cheeks are.
hierarchy of weights? Like if you want an object or a figure to advance, you use a heavier outline.
Absolutely. Especially if there's more going on in the panel than just a single figure.
Okay.
The figure that's most towards the forefront, I will outline it in a much heavier line.
Okay. How much texture is too much texture, and how do you decide? Like, for instance, you're drawing jeans right now, so I know it's an experience thing, but is there a rule of thumb for you? Like, look, I'm only going to hyper texture something that I want people to really focus on. I'm not going to sit there and draw all the stitching around the patch on the jeans or the pocket of jean, what have you. Is that something conscious? I know you've done it so many years now, it's second nature, but for people getting started, explain to them why you shouldn't just go crazy with like every stitch on the jean and every stitch on the
It's
pocket.
distracting.
Okay.
It's distracting. And besides, I know I'm going to color this too. So
yeah.
Yeah. If I see something, your line, oh, thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
Well, I've been doing it for 30 plus years, so I have a little bit of practice.
Phenomenal. You get the idea watching Barb work there that number one, she understands contour, she understands weight, she understands, the heavier side of a stroke versus the lighter side. You want the heavier side away from your light source. As it moves toward the light source, you want it to taper.
Well, I'm going to be using another brush here.
Okay.
So
Vex brush.
She's lying on asphalt, so we're going to put in a little texture here.
All right.
For the asphalt, she's her shadow,
Mm-hmm.
but the line is too delineated, in my opinion. So I am going to soften it by choosing another stipple brush in the erasing feature and soften the edges of that so it's not quite so harsh. And you're going to see that here in a second.
Okay. Do you find, this brings up another question. Do you find that some preset brushes are too structured and look too mechanical?
Yes.
Okay.
And there's a fix that I use for that. And that's exactly what this is I will go in and break up that structure with a different pattern in erasing. And see, so I'm taking away some of the edging on that.
Yes, see that.
And making it a softer edge. All right. You need to Google smooth inking brushes for Procreate if you want any of the smooth inking that I've just showed you. And here are some of the brushes that I have in my collection. The infamous Kirby Crackle.
I love it.
I went out and bought that when you first mentioned it. I have that now. It is really cool.
Mm-hmm.
There's stripes. I've got this one I created, the dual brush. I saw somebody do it online and I followed the instructions and I made a dual brush.
A dual brush. Now explain in detail what that is.
It makes two identical lines side by side. So say if you're doing a rope and you don't want to do two lines to make the rope, I can just do it in one line.
Nice.
I got a crow quill here that's really great if I want to do a bit more texturing or rough. I use crow quill for like bricks, rocks, very organic.
That. Yeah, very, very organic. Are there certain, like when you see, when you're faced with a particular inker, do you immediately look at, or penciler, do you look at the pencil art and go, okay, I know exactly what brushes I need for this. I need crow quill. I would say
90% of my brushes inks are all with the smooth brush. Stiletto says, I have no experience with drawing digitally. I like that you can edit and erase without wearing out your paper stock and picture.
Yeah.
True.
Oh yeah.
Now here I'm going to mess with a brush and just show you kind of that you can adjust the taper on the end I'm just picking a generic studio brush. And you can see with the stroke properties on it.
Okay.
It says streamline. You can adjust right here. It says streamline. You can adjust that streamline to take out any wobbles. And here I'm making the tapers. I'm taking all the tapering out. And watch what the line's going to look like. It's very flat.
Okay.
So now I'm going to go back in and put that tapering back in. So you can mess with your brushes. And so here the taper pressure right here, I'm going to put a taper on the end, both ends. So that when I go back now, when I go back there, now I've got a taper on the end. See this taper down here?
Sweet. Yes.
Yeah. Always, 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 when you're messing with your brushes, duplicate the brush first so you don't lose your original, and just mess with them. See what all the different functions do in your brush controls.
Now this is in settings, or are you in? We're in the settings portion of the brush itself.
Well, I'm just the settings portion of the brush. Here I'm just choosing some fun stuff. Here's zips and stipples. I have to say that I actually prefer Zipatone than the Procreate stipples and zips because they're a little bit stiff, too regimented.
Okay.
In my opinion.
Yeah, that you tend to flatten things, right? If you do too much of this pattern work, preset pattern.
See that there are lots of different pens and brushes that you can purchase, and I find a lot of them on Etsy. Believe it or not, there are people on Etsy that have designed custom-made brushes and they're selling them, and you can find just about anything. Here I'm showing you my color palette. We're going to get into coloring. Leave a trail of breadcrumbs.
Breadcrumbs.
Here's my color palettes, and I have color palettes for all kinds. I have one called English Manor, Sunset, Batman Blues, Muka Morning.
Oh wow!
One called Mom.
No,
because my there. No, that's my Night Sky. There's blood right there. All my blood tones.
Okay.
Here I picked blood, and I'm going to show you a little example of blood. I have one named Mom because my mom is just loves pinks and purples. So I have a whole palette just pinks and purples.
Pinks and purples. So what about inking? Oh, well, this is a challenge. Explain to everyone, what you're inking here. I mean, it's the Punisher, obviously. But...
Yeah. Now, all right, I'm going to pause this here for a moment. All right. This is Dean's. These are a sketch that Dean did for convention. It was never meant to be inked. They were tonal sketches done in pencil. So I wanted to ink it. So first of all, I have to look at it and I have to pick out, well, this is a darker tone. So this is going to be black. This is a medium tone here. So I'm going to probably crosshatch this. And then you got to pick and choose what you're going to leave white because he's got so many like little really extremely light tones. I'm just going to leave that blank because I'm going to go in and color this later. So right here, I have his leg that's completely black because it's pretty much a match for this one. He's got blood coming down his leg here. He's got some muscle definition, and I need to choose what I'm going to keep, what I'm going to ink, and how I'm going to ink it. The easiest way to do that on these tonal ones is, first of all, to ink it and then take your opacity down, way down, so that you can see the blue underneath. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to, here, just a second. All right, I'm going to take my opacity down.
Okay.
So that I can see through it.
Yeah, you can reveal the texture underneath. Yeah.
Right. And then I'm going to go in with my erasing pen, my super smooth erasing brush, and I'm going to go for the negative space. So I'm working backwards in this. I'm working from black to white instead of white to black.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm adding some of my own touches too.
Yeah, it's almost like working on scratchboard, if you've ever done scratchboard, where it's already layered in black and you literally use a metal tip and you scrape away. So you're literally just adding light. But that's what you're doing. A lot of people, there is an effect in Photoshop called dodge and burn that you can do the same thing with. That's really cool. Look at that. She's adding wrinkles and all the little cool stuff. Now, what about edging here? Soft or hard? And then how do you soften that? Or do you want to soften it? A lot of inkers want that hard edge on every edge. What are your thoughts on that? Because you're actually inking something that is drawn with tonal soft edges, and now what you're doing is interpreting them with hard edges.
Yeah, I can soften it with hatching.
Okay.
Nobody goes for that soft crap. We want it hard, Dean.
Yeah, man, I need wood, especially.
Oh man.
Yeah. If it's me, what he says, if it's me in battle, I ain't blood on my leg. But seriously, folks, we got you. We got you. Let's see. Stiletto says, since you
personally, honestly, though, I've never been a big fan of soft edges.
Okay.
In art, and I've always liked hard edged. So even when I color in ink, it's always hard edge. I like that deliberate contrast or separation of the shapes. I'm not a big. I don't think the contrast. I don't think sometimes the inking and the soft coloring style mix for me.
Depends on the
yes, I can see it. I can see that.
And so
he's saying, Stiletto says, since you draw straight to the tablet, you eliminate the scanning and fidgeting with the DPI to use for better line art.
I do. I used to scan into the computer. All right, that one's done.
Look at that. Like that was a great transition to go from all the subtle spectrum of gray from all the way to dark gray.
Well, you'll see more of that in the third segment because that's all I do is I just work on your stuff there. I used to scan in artwork and turn it blue and then print it out and ink on it. I don't have to do that anymore digitally. However, I get the pencils and it's gray when I get them. The digital file is gray and I pull it up in Procreate and I adjust the color balance to turn it blue. So that's all I really have to do for that. I just never, let's see, his experiences at Corel, they're all, that's, what DPI would you scan that Punisher picture in at? You have to use at least 300. I usually do 350 to 400. You get up to 600 and you're going to have like one layer to work on. It's
it eats up memory like crazy when you make it 600.
Yeah, you want to have
if you don't have a high speed processor, it'll slow down your work.
And you don't need it for black and white art.
You don't. I've suggested to people
300 is usually good enough.
Yeah,
300 is a good standard. If you're
I usually use 350, but that's because my Procreate just kind of automatically sticks it at 350.
Oh, does it?
Yeah. And the thing is, if you're working full size, it's going to get shrunk down anyway.
Yeah,
it's going to get shot down to a smaller size.
I suggest to people, if you're going to go 600, save that for banners and large posters.
Right.
Yeah. Also, Procreate does not separate your line art. No. I have a program called Metabang, which is another, drawing program. But I only use it for separating line art. I pull it into Metabang, and the first thing it asks you, a little sign will pop up. Do you want to separate line art? Yes. And then I separate the line art, and I instantly export it as a PNG to Procreate. It's just that simple.
The answer is duh.
Vic says, I know this isn't process, but what was the first inking job you got?
Planet of the Apes.
Oh,
for
man.
Adventure. I did 11 issues. I started out actually doing gray tones for Eternity, and it was Tiger X. I did gray tones for them, and I jumped from gray tones then to inking. So, yeah, and I look back at those pages now, I'm like, oh my God. All the line weights are wrong.
Yeah, the same thing with my early pencil work. Ooh, yeah.
Yeah. We're going to jump to coloring here for a while. And then we'll go back to inking.
Yes.
And we'll go back to inking
Love to see some coloring. Now, this is something relatively new in your skill set world, right? Tell us about
it. It is, and I have to say, I've only been at this for a couple of years, so I'm not nearly as good as, say, Roberta. But here we are. I'm showing you a palette. I don't know if anybody can see this, but it says my palettes. I have a palette set up for Olivia, Divinity, and Zach. This is Divinity's skin tones, Zach's skin tones, his hair, her hair, her eye color, his eye color. Here's Olivia and Mr. E. This is for Sirens. This is for Sirens down here. I have the zombie. Here's my zombie tones right here.
Oh, yeah. So these are swatches you created for each
Those
of the
are
palettes
on your palette. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Cool.
Absolutely.
Very cool. So the first thing is that this, like, fair to say, this is your first step when you're approaching coloring a page. You pull your palettes up, or you create the palettes.
Yes. I also have cheat sheets. I will make mood boards. Here, and the first thing, obviously, that you have to do for every coloring job is fill in the flats. And most people think it's boring, but I enjoy it. It's kind of like coloring in a coloring book. It's very soothing. You don't have to use a lot of brain cells. It's nice to sit down and listen to a book on tape and just fill in flats.
Whose art are we filling here?
This is Alex Sarabia.
Alex Sarabia. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
When you're approaching Alex's work as a colorist, obviously it's already been inked. You are thinking, how much nuance are you going to place here? Because I'm getting to a point later on. So how are you thinking, I don't need to nuance these, or I am going to nuance these as far as highlights and shadows?
I typically stick to 3 colors unless we're in nighttime or specific, like in the latter part of Divinity number 3. It's very late afternoon and the sun is very strong at an angle, something like that. Otherwise, I usually stick to your typical 3 tones on everything.
Okay.
And that's your medium tone, which is what this is.
Okay.
And your low lights and your highlights. And I'm not going to go, this is going to cut off pretty soon here, and I'll go into the shading.
Okay.
But I prefer to keep it simple. Don't overcomplicate it, because it's really not needed. You can do a good coloring job with just your midtones, low lights, and highlights.
Highlights. That's a good observation, because I have seen colorists, especially in the last 5 to 10 years, really overwhelm the comic book art with this odd airbrushed look where, I mean, there's multiple layers on a face, and then, white hot highlights for the point of the nose or the cheekbone, and you're going, dude, easy with that. You're not doing a painting here. It's just, you're supposed to be enhancing the inks. And I'm glad that you're showing restraint there, because in my opinion, some of the color work, it becomes a color demo instead of a comic book.
No, that's that. Did you see that? That's my color swatches. I got pictures off the internet of several different kinds of blue jean colors.
Oh, wow.
And I choose a color of the blue jeans, and it'll go back, because I do this 3 times. There's 3 people. I have a file on my Procreate and elsewhere. I have other files too, which are just color examples. Here I'm going to my color.
There you go.
Jeans.
Yeah.
So
I see you do a lot of what I do. You surround and fill.
Yes.
Like that's your flatting. That's how you do it. Okay, you get the medium tone down. Have you ever tried like the dodge and burn approach? I know that's a cheat probably, but instead of doing 3 different colors, just do the same color and then use highlights and deepening to burn it in. I know that's a different look. That is
the same thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
I do rim lighting. Quite a bit.
I like that too.
Especially as if I know where the sun is in a particular, I'll do the sun on the back. I'll rim light the person in sunlight. after scanning, Corel Scan would translate the line art into a vector image. However, the vectoring process. Oh, see, there's my cheat board. See, I've got
Oh,
colors.
Look at
Divinity
you.
shirt, Zach's shirt, the
Nice.
soldiers, the henchman, old guy.
Old guy. Yeah, I love it. Old guy.
The vectoring process caused me to lose a lot of detail. Yeah,
That's the problem with vector. I mean, you can get as detailed as you want, but again, you're dealing with mathematics with vector drawings, so you're having to use Bezier curves and points and moving points along a line, and then pulling the two arms out of the point and wobbling it to make your curves, and it becomes more of a geometry project than drawing.
Yeah.
Amateur Illustrator user. Haven't used an Illustrator for years. I quit using Bezier curves a long time ago.
Yeah, well, you know, it's math. To me, AI is math. It's not.
Yeah, well, you could do something called a pathfinder, what cut your shapes out.
Yeah.
And so I go through and just literally make anything out of cut shapes, and then you can do see the thing if like if you're inking a shape, like say like I made that guy's shirt, right? Then I would just add a stroke onto it. And there's ways that you can get the stroke to mimic ink lines.
Yes.
So you don't even have to go through the process of inking the shirt. You just transfer to a stroke. Boom.
Right.
And it's done.
See, this is right over my head because I started so late in life with digital art. I needed a program that, a monkey could work on.
Or that mimicked analog as close.
Well, the only advantage that people use vector besides Photoshop is that you can blow a vector image to any size and it stays sharp.
Right.
That's why it's mostly used in commercial and graphic design, but not comics, because you don't really need to blow comics up to a size of a building.
The only thing I use vector for in comics would be lettering and mastheads, logos.
Yep. That's about all I use it for too.
I mean, you can ink and do it. I mean, it's not very fun.
No.
But you can. I mean,
look, Vic Dew says my monkey brain can't understand stuff like that.
Well, let me tell you,
a lot of us feel.
If I could learn anybody can learn, because I needed something that a 5-year-old could teach me. And Procreate was simple. It's like Photoshop for dummies. It was simple to learn.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are using it. And it does the job. That's all I care about is it does the job.
It does the job. It does a good job. Stiletto says, Dean, I agree. Skin, especially the face, shouldn't look like a glossy vinyl suit. I'm with you, man. A lot of comics today, it's like, wow, they're sculpting in color. It's like, okay, that's cool. That's a style. If that's what you like. For comic books, I tend to let the inks do the volume. And three levels of color is just fine.
When I color my own stuff, I essentially do a flat and maybe add one other shade. Sometimes
I use two shades. I'll use a shade and highlight over the flat, and that's it.
All I do. That's it. That's all I do when I color my own stuff.
Now, I don't
do
colorist
it very often, but
I'm not a colorist at all, but I do appreciate the sophistication of color theory and how a good colorist will use a complementary edge lighting highlight, and it's fantastic. You get like somebody in red, and somebody will throw a green edge light, and then bounce back on the other side and do like a purple, just enough to really round it out. But you can really go down that rabbit hole of color theory and just overuse it. But if you're I don't know, if you're very strategic, it's like anything else. If you're very strategic on where you use color shadows or color highlights, you can really bring a lot of depth to a piece. But see, I love the volume you've got here. It's not overdone. It's just enough. Let's see.
Yeah, and you always put the highlights on, the stuff that's sticking out the most. The nose is going to stick out and catch a little sun.
Sure.
The chin, the earlobes.
Yeah.
And the cheekbones, and pretty much that's it.
Now, what about hair highlights? Are you, like, when you go in and do hair highlights, are you thinking in terms of, okay, I just want sort of a soft shape, or again, do you want a hard edge on your colors with hair? Because a lot of people make hair look like almost a sculpted wax figure.
Yeah. No, I use a soft brush, airbrush on the hair. You can see there, the palms, just to make it look more three-dimensional.
That shoulder was awesome too. Notice that. Stiletto says, Dean, yes, editing the shaping nodes are a pain in the butt. Yeah, they are. They really are. Vic says, this overused color messed with me when I get reprints. Yeah, I hate when people recolor something. It's kind of like coloring an old movie like It's a Wonderful Life. Don't color that. Leave it alone. You know, if it's black and white, leave it in black. Although we do reprints where we recolor things, but it's done tastefully. It's done tastefully. It can be done well. Look at this now. Okay, when you're going to contour Zach's face here, first thing, obviously, you're going to remember, okay, where's my light source? So see, you're casting the shadow of the hair, and then the brow. You're going to go brow, and then under the nose. You know, you got to be careful with the under the nose thing because you'll get that little Hitler mustache thing a lot of times. Don't get too harsh on it. But yeah, I love watching that, just that take shape and how you gain volume with that. But you're keeping it simple, which I love. You know, that's fantastic. Like, okay, to color a page, once flats are done, it's relatively fast. Is that fair to say, Barb? Like, how long does it take you?
It depends on the complexity of the page and how much detail there is. I mean, there's Sirens pages that were all in a jungle, and oh my god, there's so many colors of green, and there's so many leaves and trees and all that stuff. Most of it. Now here's a couple of tips. I set the flats down, and I'll set a layer of just skin, just hair, just shirts, just pants, stuff like that. And I will alpha lock each one of those layers so that I can go in and do the brushes over it, and the lines are set. So I can brush up close to it, and it won't go over like this line here, right there. It won't bleed over onto the background because the alpha lock is setting that tone there. I won't go outside the lines. I won't color outside the lines.
Right.
Because
And
of the alpha lock.
how complicated is it to set the alpha lock? You just set it, right? You just pick the layer.
You just click it. If it's something really complicated like the jungles in the Sirens I just finished, I mean, it's the character. He's running through a jungle in multiple panels, and in some panels he's really small, and the jungles are just overwhelming, and especially there's a lot of background with jungles, and I will color burn those or color hold the black on that, the black inking on the background. So I will take it down to a medium brown to set those really, really super busy backgrounds into the background. So they're faded a little bit so it doesn't overwhelm with the action that's happening up front. So I like to use color holds to delineate backgrounds and foregrounds.
So instead of using black, give us the advantages of a color hold.
If you want to fade something, or if there's a specific light on it, perhaps there's coming up at the end of this coloring demo is some color holds that I'll be showing you.
In the meantime, Vic says, listen, no matter what, it's better than having to color Stephen Platt. I've seen Stephen Platt's work, and it can be very complicated.
There I cast a shadow with her hair.
Look at that. Yes. Oh, that's cool.
Color holds come in handy on a whole bunch of different, for a whole bunch of different reasons. Like I said, if you have a really busy page, you want to fade the background. And if everything is inked, it's all inked. Inking is made to make something jump out at you. You don't want the background to jump out at you. You take the inks and you turn them brown or blue or whatever. Yeah. You know.
So it's giving the illusion of atmospheric perspective and pushing your background further.
I will also do that with like blood, because I don't, real blood doesn't have a black outline around it. So I'll color hold the inks on the blood to be the same color as I'm using for the blood. So it all looks natural.
Stiletto says, I finally got brave and branched out into paint. The bitmap line art had holes in it, even after using different DPI and duplicating the process.
All right, Stiletto. Here's what I suggest. You need to go to the University of YouTube And
YouTube you.
Yeah, YouTube you. I have learned so much from watching tutorials on YouTube. They have tutorials on everything, and you can learn a lot of stuff. Highly recommend the University of YouTube.
Now, in Photoshop, this may be considered a cheat, but everything works in digital. You can actually use a lighting effect. You can use spotlight. Like if this was a nighttime scene
Yes,
and you wanted the characters to be under a spotlight, you actually use a spotlight effect. You can use lens flares. If your character's looking up at the sun and you want a lens flare to pop off the edge of a car or a helicopter or something that's shiny, you can do these things. But again, strategic choices on those, because if you over Photoshop,
don't overuse that stuff, or it looks really fake.
It looks annoying. I remember when people first started discovering blurs.
Oh yeah, everything in the backgrounds were blurred.
Action blur. It's like, dude, we get it. You can do an action blur, but it's not always useful. Yeah, fix this. Yeah, talking about YouTube you after the stream though. Yeah.
Yes,
after the stream. You got to watch us now. Stiletto has another question. Barb, what you've done in just minutes would have taken me hours in Corel, primarily because I just can't lock in the line and art quality. Practice. That's really what it is. You're looking at a veteran of 30 plus years of inking.
Yeah, but only 2 years of coloring. So, Roberta would come in here and put me to shame. And I have seen those highlighting effects. And as far as I'm aware, you cannot do it in Procreate, but if there's a way, I'm going to figure it out.
Okay.
I'm going to go back to the YouTube University and figure it out. You
know what I would do? Take the image as a PNG or what have you into Photoshop, and just put that filter right over it, and then export it again.
Except I don't have Photoshop.
Oh, okay, all right.
So
I'm a Photoshop nerd. I had to use Photoshop for everything.
I've been using it since the early '90s. So
well, then how powerful that program is.
I know lots of stuff, but I have only scratched the surface of what it can do. It is an incredible program.
Yeah, it really is.
For anybody who is overwhelmed by that kind of stuff, there's a light. It's also an Adobe program called
Photoshop Elements.
Well, there's Photoshop Elements, and then there's I'm just blanking completely on the name for it.
That's all right. There are lighter versions.
It's essentially Photoshop Light is what it is. So get with something like that. It's got fewer things to learn, but you'll eventually come to the idea. Hey, there's more in Photoshop. Maybe I want to look at it too. And then there are other programs that do a lot of what Photoshop does that you don't have to get into Adobe's subscription model. Affinity is what I'm
this is a finished
slowly
product.
moving over to Affinity to do its to use their programs. Yes, very nice.
Beautiful.
Now special effects.
Whoa, cool.
Yeah, I'm messing with this cover. Okay,
mess with it. Now this is inked by Tommy, and I drew it, and it's got some energy, a lightning crackle in it, and I'd love to see what you're going to do with this.
All right, I'm going to put a layer above the inks, and I'm going to turn it into a clipping mask.
Okay, and explain why to those who
That's how I do color holds.
Okay, got it.
So now I'm going to pick a color, and the clipping mask will only put color on what was on the prior level or on the layer. So here I'm just turning all these black lines gold using a clipping mask above the ink layer.
Oh yeah, look at that.
I'm just messing here. I didn't mess with my real cover. I'm just using this as a real quick tutorial about some of these effects.
Wow.
So there's the clipping mask on that.
Very nice. Makes those radial lines pop.
Exactly.
Yeah,
that's
nice.
One of the reasons why you want to do a color hold is on your inks is to do just stuff like that. And now, what am I going to do next here?
Vic says, I can't wait for the last few backers to hit that less than $50 on the Kickstarter. Yes, sir. Y'all go to that Kickstarter and knock it out. YouTube is such a great resource. Says, I just haven't done anything serious in 1820. Well, do something serious, man. Go for it. I want to see it.
Oh, I'm gonna use my luminescent
okay.
brush. That comes with Procreate.
Okay.
I've added some more, but it comes with some basic luminescent brushes. And this is what you do when you want to get a glowy effect behind something.
Nice. Very nice.
So put some luminescence in there. You can use different colors. I've used.
They don't have an outer glow function.
Outer glow, like in Photoshop.
Yeah.
I haven't used one in it yet. That doesn't mean they don't have one. This is a fairly deep app as well, or program, I should say, as well. I haven't dug deep enough into it. Whoa, that turned out great.
Yeah, this is not the finished product. I copied that and just messing with this one.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to try a different color here. Show you that you don't have to. It doesn't all turn out white. Depends on the color you choose.
Mm-hmm.
So here's
again with color, advancing colors and receding colors. You know, color theory tells us that warm colors advance and cool colors recede. So when you're looking at a piece like this, what do you think? What do you want people to look at first? I'll ask you that way. As the colorist, what do you want people to see in this piece first?
her glowing eyes.
Okay.
I want you to see the power coming off of her. So now I'm going to go back to the clipping mask, and I'm going to use the glow brush.
All right.
To add her glowing eyes.
Okay.
So that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
For that one.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, that's the first thing you see when you look at that piece. Your eyes go right to her eyes, so it's a focus on her. Okay, so Procreate. Compare it to Photoshop. You're pretty familiar with Photoshop too, right, Barb? Or no? Not as much?
No, not at all.
Not as much. Okay. I've used both. I would say that what Procreate does is it streamlines some of the best features of Photoshop without the depth.
Yeah, there are features on Photoshop that I would really love to have, but Procreate doesn't have. But I just found it so difficult to learn. I just couldn't get it. I guess maybe I was too old of a dog to learn that new of a trick.
Photoshop is tough. It's really tough. You would have to go in depth in YouTube in order to get
you can help you.
Yeah, but I started,
and I wasn't willing to pay the subscription fees either.
See, that's the other thing. What got me on Procreate when I got my iPad Pro was, hey man, it's just a lot cheaper to get Procreate, which was like, I don't know, $10 when I bought it. Now it's maybe
which is why you can look at Affinity, and they have Affinity Photo, have Affinity Designer, and they also have an InDesign program publisher that does what Adobe InDesign does, and it's a lot cheaper. You don't have to pay monthly.
Yeah,
I actually found them on sale for as low as $20. So
nice.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm going to pull up another video, but it's just going to be in the background. We can talk. There's nothing special I'm going to point out. It's just nothing special. It's just Dean's pencils.
Nah, yeah. There's a lot of hacking. It's, scratching.
So this is just going to run while we talk.
Okay. All right.
Strange enough, I was going to say something about some of the some of the coloring I see. It seems like now maybe it could just be me, but I've noticed after coloring my picture, especially when I start doing shadows and stuff, to draw with the shadows. In other words, how do I, like, a lot of people just kind of like take a shape and they make like a little shadow underneath, then a highlight and a top. But I've always, it's sometimes hard for me to sometimes see artists, and there are some artists that actually will like draw with the shadow and never think how light would actually hit. Like in the last piece when the girl was jumping over the building and she had the magenta shirt on, her whole bottom side should be in shadow. That light should be hitting the top. And I know a lot of artists get really, well, I don't want to cover that stuff up. I'm like, yeah, but if you actually draw it relatively, like how the light's going to hit it, it makes his characters pop so much more. And if you don't, that was my only critique of some of the coloring is it even at the end it looked great, but it still looked flat. It didn't.
That's a good critique, though. That's stuff I need because I'm still learning.
The one who's fantastic is Mike Mignola. There's that little flat, but I go in and like if you look at my like shadows, I actually draw shapes and stuff. Like one character had his whole leg, like this whole center of his legs in shadow, just the edges are in light because that's how the light would hit. And sometimes doesn't always look great, but when you actually get the whole piece done, it looks much more dynamic to me. It really pops. I think people get caught up when they do shapes, just like, well, the shadow goes under, there's a little shadow line underneath the shape and a little highlight on top, and that's every shape. And it's like, that's you're defeating yourself. Really look at how light hits everything and how it doesn't have to be like photorealistic, but really get into drawing those shadow shapes.
Yeah, don't be afraid. I think what you're saying is, and this is right, don't be afraid to darken large portions of your figure because it does imply more realism and more depth.
And it pops those highlighted parts.
Pops the highlight parts. Another counter to that also, Aaron, that helps emphasize the blocked out areas is you can still edge light some areas, and you can use the conceit of comic book lighting. If you want, for example, if you've got somebody in heavy shadow, but you still want their figure to be clear from the background, edge light certain points, like a knee, a calf, an ankle, a heel of their leg, just so people understand, okay, he's not just melting into a black shadow unless that's what you're intending it to do.
Right. So a lot of times in my pictures, I will put my final step is a white highlight line, and I only put those on mostly time in objects I want you to focus on.
Right.
So I'm actually doing one of my not comics. I'm doing it fully colored with the shadows and everything. It's taken me a little bit, but I only put the white highlight on knocked because that's what I want you to look at. And then I do darken a lot of the trees in the background. He's supposed to be in a haunted forest, and I actually, after I'm done with the color, I actually from the edges will put in black gradients. So darken the edges. So again, I'm forcing your eye to that thing. You can still see pretty much everything in the drawing. There's certain areas I want you to focus on. And then you could also do it with color theory too. I mean, my little barbarian has bright orange hair. That's the brightest colored all the drawings. And I make sure of that because that's what I want you to focus on, his face. Yeah. So I use that bright colored orange as a focal point no matter where I'm doing it. So it's a way of thinking of color theory. But again, I've learned when drawing with shadow and light, when I started doing it, that I started drawing this entire shapes with shadow and then also some shapes with light, and start playing with how dynamic of things. And once you start playing with that, man, you can make stuff just really pop.
You really can. Stiletto says, I have my reservations when it comes to learning how to use layers. Layers are the most wonderful.
I never understood why people had, and I'm not picking on you, Stiletto, but I've never understood layers. Just always seem so
natural,
straightforward. Yeah, straightforward. People's like, I don't want to get into layers. I'm like, well, every program uses them, and they're super easy.
Yeah, it's what it does. Layers is a wonderful way to forgive yourself and make mistakes and just delete the layer, and you don't damage the original piece. Now, for two things, I want to welcome Rory and Brent. Welcome to the broadcast here. We've been getting deep into these inks and how Barb approaches them right now. What's running is her inking a Deadpool drawing that I did. And again, it's important to remember this drawing was not designed to be inked. It was a tonal graphic piece, and Barb is using her decades of expertise here to interpret what is really a gray tonal drawing and turning it into black and white. And she's doing a great job with it. Talk a little bit here. What are we looking at exactly? I know you're real close here. Okay.
Inks are black. I've learned that.
Yes.
Color theory, eye movement, shadows, lots of shadows.
Yeah,
I can talk like an artist.
Working with a tonal piece like this, like I said before, I'm taking the darkest pieces that he has penciled and turning it black. And the mid pencils, the midtones, I'm cross-hatching them.
Okay. Okay.
So it's just a matter of using my own best judgment on what needs to be left alone as white, what needs to be filled in, what needs to be cross-hatched, and how to cross-hatch. Do you want to lightly cross-hatch in wider spaces? Do you want it closer together? You want double cross-hatching? You know, it all depends on the tonal space.
Does it help that you've inked over me?
Yes, for
before?
decades.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because you kind of know what I'm looking for, and how I create light and shadow. So, oh wow, look who comes dragging in at the last minute. Oh wow!
Wow! Hey, you're so late.
Aaron, glad you can make it, my friend.
It's so
I
full.
Yes. Now, Aaron, I do not mind critiques on my coloring at all because while I am very confident in my inking skills, I've only been coloring for a couple of years, and I am still a newbie yet. I'm very much learning.
I have a different sort of approach I take to coloring, so it may not be the same as yours, because I like more of like a cel-shaded cartoon look. But I did notice that when I started coloring my stuff, that I started treating, when I went in to do the shadows, my shadows take a while, could take up to 2 to 3 hours because I'm actually I'm creating these sort of shapes in shadow, and I'm actually drawing in the shadow. So I'm not just completely following the contour of my ink line. I'm actually drawing the shadows in. It's a little like a separate drawing, I guess you might say. And then usually lighting, but I'll add like little different, like I'll add separate shadow pieces off the shadows that were never in the drawing. So I will draw in these shadow shapes, and I don't do soft. I do very hard edge shadowing and stuff, which I like. So that may not be something, but yeah, I will go off and draw these like little shadow geometric shapes, and sometimes it can really pop, because I've learned like coloring. I think a lot of people take coloring sometimes as just like a final way to like, oh, throw some color on, no big deal. But when I started looking at coloring as its own process and its own sort of like another attempt at redrawing it and making it pop, I got like so much more satisfying results for me.
Yeah, it sounds like, your approach is geometric shapes, and it sounds like your approach is more wired and appropriate to Illustrator in a way, because to me, Illustrator is using construction paper. It's like cutting out little pieces of construction paper and layering on top of each other to make an image that's an illusion, rather than drawing. You're actually building. That's how I see your work. It's built. Your work is more built.
Right.
You know what I mean? Constructed. And that's not a hit. That's really
no. It's meant to be. I've always liked very much more geometric shapes and stuff. I've even been attracted to that. Larry Stroman was a guy, he always did.
Oh yeah, he's amazing.
And so he was always stuff that just artistically that just invigorates me. I don't know if my coloring style would work the same with a soft focus brush, but I do know that sometimes I've noticed just studying some colorists that go out of their way. Started studying painters a lot. Who do one of my favorite artists is Miguel from the 80s. Yeah, very geometric.
Miguel, very geometric, very graphic. We used to call that graphic, which means just flat shapes.
I have a question for the writers in the group here. When you are writing,
it's our time.
Yes, setting up scenes for your artists, are you keeping in mind the time of day or the lighting effects that you need to mention in the script? Because I found myself having to remind my penciler a couple of times. Now, this is supposed to take place in late afternoon. Once I began writing, I started thinking of all this stuff. And oh, damn! I need to make sure that he knows that this is late afternoon and the shadows are really long.
Well, our first story was pretty easy because it takes place in the span of like what, Rory, 3 days, two and a half. Yeah. So because it was really part of the plot. Starts in an evening, goes overnight, morning, evening, morning, right? Something like that. So yeah, that was for us. That was pretty easy to do.
Dean, what's wrong with you? You forgot the main part of the belt buckle.
What? Huh? What?
You got to put the little tab with the little metal that cuts through.
Oh yeah.
I see so many artists not do that. I'm like, you have an inefficient buckle there, Chief. It ain't gonna work.
It could be one of those loop through and loop back ones,
Maybe,
or like the military style, right?
Right.
For those of you wondering why every once in a while everything just goes black, it's because you have to have a closed loop. And if you have one tiny little bit,
and it goes zoop.
It'll fill the entire screen. So then
I learned that from Microsoft Paint back in the early 90s.
Oh yeah,
you click the fill and just. I would just draw swirls and swirls and swirls and swirls and swirls, and then go to the fill thing, and then click and click and click.
And
you say, "I'm an artist."
And I'm an.
No, let me answer your question, Barbara. I actually do. I always try to say what time of day, frankly, because it's going to set some serious mood.
Yeah.
I like Kayla.
How romantic do you want to be?
Hopefully, be done not before too much longer. Happens in the mountains in Libya somewhere, and I'm thinking to myself, it has to be at night with moonlight, or else it's about two guys going and killing a bunch of terrorists, which is gonna be fairly cool in daytime, but at night it can be really spooky. So I was totally like, this has to be done, done with the moon is lighting. Are we still going to be able to see everything? And Lewis has been running with it. But in other scenes, I also have to make sure that, if it's at night, well, then where is the light source going to come from?
That's right. I have had plenty of scripts that do not indicate any of this stuff, and I have to get a hold of either the editor or the writer. It's just like, when is this taking place? Is this night? Is it evening? What you gotta tell me.
Mm-hmm.
And we're working on Wolverine now.
There you go.
And I have a good scene we hashed out. I won't give any details of the secret project, but it's a scene involving some shady, seedy characters, which normally operate at night, and then a fight scene.
Nothing good happens after midnight.
That's what my dad says. I don't know. But at one high point in the fight, a glass wall shatters, revealing that it's actually daylight the whole time. So
that's
ne'er-do-wells operating in the day, not
in the day. Yeah.
Yeah. I always thought, like in the movies, or as Batman movies, especially I think the third one, and also the Adam West stuff. Batman during the day always felt odd.
Yeah.
Batman
when he's in his political campaign office,
it always looks weird during the day. There's something about Batman.
But most of the Batman movie, that I'm talking the Adam West movie, none of that is at night.
When he's running through the streets with the bomb.
The bomb.
That would have been so much more effective at night.
Yeah. But then you would see the Salvation Army band, the Ducks,
Well, I'm glad to know that all the writers here think about things like that, because I have, in my 30 years of experience, I've run across plenty of scripts that don't seem to take that into account. And it's very frustrating.
I think it's because I'm mildly neurotic about continuity and so forth. So I'm thinking about
mildly.
I'm incredibly neurotic, like about every detail about whether
can we say OCD?
Yeah, whether what buttons look like and what facial hair was like, and if glasses existed and in what form. And so yes, I want it to. I do not want to give someone the opportunity ever to say, "I'm Scott. I noticed on page 4
their frock coat that was from 17.
The elapsed time, and if that was August of 1776, it was an overcast day.
You're gonna always have nerds like that. You're gonna have people like Aaron picking at you because of the buckle. Actually, you're gonna always have. What about the buckle, man? Where are the holes?
In the third panel, you have Felix drinking with his left hand. In the
don't
fifth
blame
panel,
me. Don't blame me for your lack of attention to detail that you saw.
Actually, I mean, I find myself as a new writer being overly focused on tiny details. Like, I'll put in a script. Remember, this is the next morning, so change their outfit.
Yes, it's very important because you catch that. Yeah, I remember. This is a while ago. Tim, who wrote Wolf Hunter, he wanted to know what the inside of a Spitfire the cockpit looked like, and it was very important. I mean, that's
that's kind of important.
Yeah,
oh yeah.
I mean, like, where's the throttle? Where's the what gauge? Yeah.
Was his pistol loaded with 9 rounds or 9,000 rounds?
When I did the first issue of Kalis, I actually have a Marine officer, ex-Marine officer friend, and I was sending him Lewis's artwork, and he was going, "No, no, yes, please keep it coming."
Yes,
which is so funny because, like, in Hollywood, when they make a military movie, they have military attachés, liaisons, and everything to tell them what's too accurate.
But sometimes they like throw it right out the window, and it kills me. Like, it's not that hard to check a uniform, to check what does the epaulette or the collar insignia look like, and
it's all in the archives.
And or like stuff on Star Trek, like Chief O'Brien at one point was a lieutenant, and like the continuity and the officer stuff, and if you just have one person, and I've always thought in the movie world, especially in the sci-fi or fantasy world, just pay a group of nerds with pizza and have them stay on the have them on the set and be like, I'm sorry, in episode 4 of season 2, why don't they
Chief
have
continuity officer
for continuity, like
they actually tried that, Scott, and then they would find people beaten up in the alley. So they had to abandon that idea because it just gets too contentious, right? It's like, no, that isn't right. That was a mirror.
Well, cheesy puff sauce on their fingers and their.
How about working in collaboration? RA and I work in collaboration on scripting this, and apparently he's. I was kind of surprised. He sent the script back, and he had in Divinity #2, he had bad guys over on the next ridge over, in a valley, next ridge over, shooting at Zach with Uzis. And I got back to him and it's like, Uzis are short, snub-nosed weapons.
Yeah.
They are not meant for long.
They're not you, Barb.
No,
good job, Barb.
Yes.
Like,
are these Barb's?
I want to see Barb pull out her Uzi and be like, "You see this?
But, actually, you see the effective range of this."
Fortunately, I was raised with a gun collector.
As she field dresses it.
My father's a gun collector, so I am aware of.
Hey, and write what you know, right?
Firearms, yeah.
Just know the more you write this stuff, the more you realize nobody pays attention.
No.
That's the one thing.
Except like
if it's important to you, then go for it. Yeah, if it's important to you, go for it, but don't, because so many people will not pick up on that stuff. They don't care.
I got a graphic novel published by a prominent publisher and with a good writer and good artist. And the scene it's a full page splash, and it's bullets flying at the reader from the revolvers. And they are bullets. One angle you can see they are bullets and shells attached
the casing on,
and then they turn it around, and it's the back end of the casing with the primer and
Rookie
I'm not a gun person, and I know that.
But you know that the whole thing doesn't fly out of the barrel. But it was surprising because it was a really great story, and I'm like, that bit of detail got missed.
It's out of the story,
right? It's a full page.
Out of the story, dude. Yeah. Well, even Barb asked me when she was drawing the Punisher illustration. She's like, "Okay, what's he carrying here?"
Yeah.
So I had to send her the visual reference.
I have no problem asking. I says, "What model of gun is he carrying here?" Because I want to make sure I got the details right. And I also had the way he drew the holster. I'm like, this looks like he drew a metal holster. Is this metal or leather?
Leather.
He had shine on it.
Plastic. I mean, could be a hard holster.
Kydex.
I appreciate that sort of stuff. When I like reading through something or watching a movie, or a novel, and then I like going back and noticing the attention to detail. I like those. I like when they do that. And I know sometimes budget-wise, time-wise, whatever, style-wise, it just doesn't work.
Sometimes you got a rotoscope.
But sometimes
nerve balance.
Yeah.
Yes, it can be.
There can be a moment.
So did I get mad inking solitaire? No, I absolutely loved inking solitaire. In fact, I loved it so much. I did every single issue of it. And then when I started Divinity, I asked, well, there, I'm done. I asked Jeff Johnson to do a cover. And if you've seen the pink cover, oh, it's this one right here. This cover here, there, that's a Jeff Johnson cover.
That's really
I
nice.
like that one.
Yeah.
He and I worked on solitaire together. Yeah, I loved working with him.
He's got a really great style. You know, it's classic, but it is dynamic, powerful, and it's in the realism school, but not so much that it's stiff. It's very, very dynamic.
Yeah, it's he has his own unique style, and it's fun to ink.
Wait. They did the guns right in it. Did they do the guns right in it, Barb? In Solitude?
That's 30 years ago. I don't know.
No, I remember. There's a Mac 10 in it. I remember that.
Wow.
So that was kind of cool. So, okay, before we wrap up here, we got to talk about, there's a Kickstarter, and I think Barb needs to talk about the Kickstarter.
Oh, I'm doing all the talking tonight. Yes.
I know.
Yes. And do we have a link? Do we have a link in our podcast here?
I'm sure.
I hope so. Roland.
Actually, go to Silverline Comics and or go to YouTube, go to Kickstarter and put in
any of my social media sites. And since I'm the only Barbara Kaalberg,
right?
I have 11 social media sites, so I'm the only Barbara Kaalberg on the internet. If you're going to find
and just Google Silverline and I mean,
Divinity / Trumps, it'll come right up.
Well, you can go to Kickstarter and put in Silverline, and it'll take you to take you to the ones that have been there before, but it'll also show you which ones are live.
The top one should be,
and so you can go to the live one as well.
And Divinity, my book that you saw me inking and coloring earlier, it is issue number 3 is kickstarting right now, and you can get all the back issues. Roland's Trumps is issue number 4 is kickstarting with it. And if you guys have never read Trumps before, it is an awesome book. He takes a deck of cards and turns it into an entire comic universe, with 4 tribes, and they're all competing to be the Trump deck.
It's Game of Thrones with the cards.
Yeah, and it's got political intrigue, and it's got backstabbing,
amazing art,
betrayal.
The
art is fantastic.
Very powerful. Tell us about. Are there any incentives in the like original art and so forth?
Because some of the original artists to die for. There's a Mark Nelson piece. I don't know if it has sold yet, but if you guys aren't familiar with Mark Nelson, he's one of the legendary artists in comics, and he did a little 8.5 by 10 sketch of Divinity for me for this Kickstarter specifically. And there's other artwork by oh gosh, I can't remember. I just went blank.
Sarabia.
Yeah, there's Alex Sarabia, and because I have given up physical inking. The physical artwork that you get that's inked by me on this Kickstarter is pretty much the last of my physical artwork. So you get it now because you never will get it again. Yeah.
See, there's added value there, kids. So that's never going to happen.
There's a lot of original artwork for sale, and it's all beautiful. Every single piece is beautiful on there.
It is. Any other announcements or anything? What's going on with Steam Patriots, guys? As long as both wizards.
This is as long as you mentioned it.
Can't talk about it.
We can. I would like to say that our true fans, the folks that are watching right now too, this is where you're getting the tickle Gucci goo, because be ready for the tickling, and it will get more pronounced. So stay tuned. That's
more torturous.
Yes, stay tuned,
Can
everybody.
Can you be any more vague?
I know that's ask Roland. I don't know how the vagaries. We're steeped in vagary.
Rob, what about Twilight Grim? Anything coming up? Twilight Grim, talk to us.
Well, Twilight Grim's all done.
Okay.
It was a 4-issue thing, and there's been no talk of doing any more. Although it kind of ends on a point where there could be more story to it. But so far, I haven't been approached to do that. I'm working on a book with Ron Forty are called the Boston Bombers, which will be a 4-issue miniseries that will collect into a graphic novel. And I'm on page 20 of issue 1 right now. So that's coming right along. In fact, it's on the board now, kind of loosely sketched out.
Tease there. That's nice.
Yeah. We need to have one of these podcasts following your pencils sometime.
Yeah, we need to do that. Rob, would you be up for over the shoulder?
I've got I got a tripod that I put my iPad on. I can shoot over my shoulder, and then maybe take it and speed it up like she's done her inking. So it's a little more interesting than just watching me do this all for an hour.
Yeah, if you kind of Bob Ross monologue while you
put a little happy face.
We're gonna hide a little squirrel behind this trash can.
A little happy little explosion here.
Little death.
This grenade's our little secret.
Just put a little blood.
About you, man?
Just a blood. Just a dash.
Just a little dash.
We know when we get to the.
That would be fantastic.
That would be fantastic. Brent, I know you got Kalis already done and out. When is Cape Town gonna hit it?
I believe that'll be next month's Kickstarter. For
Cape Town.
Cool. Nice.
Yeah.
So we're coming up on that. Aaron, I mentioned you just a moment ago when you took off your headphones, but
I'm sorry.
Tell us what you got in the works, just so kind of tease.
Show me what you got.
It'd have to be,
happy little vampire.
Happy little vampire.
I can show you. One. I don't know if I can. Can I share the screen or?
Yeah. We got a couple minutes.
Is it present? Isn't that what it is on here?
Yeah.
Yeah, share screen.
Vic says, according to the Silverline Instagram, you're looking for a penciler to the scanner.
Scanner I go. Yes. Send it to Roland.
Send it to Roland. Yes.
Yeah. So
here you go.
Wow.
This is the first page of my new comic I'm doing.
That is gorgeous.
Cool. So that's what I was kind of talking about, like playing with the like shadows, because if you go into here and turn off the line art, you still see those blacks, those shadows.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, it still works.
Yeah, you take away the color. Yeah,
it does.
Wow.
And
howdy,
that black line. So this
Good to see you, man.
Tommy.
Yeah, I don't know. You turn on the colors again.
Very cool. That is gorgeous.
Yeah. So the whole book will look like this, and this is like the lettering and stuff. So I'm working on page 2 and 3. I'm doing the obsoletes too. So I just got done finishing 2 to 3 pages of obsoletes, and I'm doing this. And so
we can look forward to this new one like being done like what, a couple of weeks, because you like knocked
I know. They're pretty fast. Yeah, because I mean this is funny. This is the way my Goblins was colored. Goblins is colored very differently. I let a lot of the line work do it, but in this one, this is more straightforward. Yeah.
I really like that a lot.
I really like that too. Yeah, Vic likes your coloring too. He's just kissing your butt though.
Oh yeah.
He's just trying to get in good with
points.
And then I might pitch this to Silverline. Let's see. But each issue is going to be a standalone story, so you won't have to read issue 1, 2, 3, 4. Every issue is its own story, so you can read them all.
Done in one, huh?
Yeah, you can read them all out of order. So
very nice.
Yeah,
very nice. Well, I appreciate your time, Barb. I know that took a lot, to get all that together. Let's give Barb a hand, guys. She did great tonight.
Round of applause.
Appreciate her. And next week, just a little tease. Next week, we're going to be talking about costume and character, which comes first, which informs the other, which is more important, and why. So we're going to get a little bit in depth there, and maybe have a therapy session with Aaron. But that's always the case. But as far as
giving me therapy and me giving you guys therapy, because if anyone needs therapy, Dean, I mean,
it's a give and take, my friend. It's a give and take.
I mean, I have a whole list of stuff that's wrong with you, Dean. If you
man, we do a lot of
airing of grievances.
And so we need to do some of it on camera for more entertainment.
On camera. Yeah.
But we always say the same thing as we close out, and we like to do this. So everyone, always remember, make mine.
Silverline. I'm April Hunter. Make mine Silverline.
All right.